One of the cooler things that the prequels introduced was the concept of hyperdrive booster rings, which can add lightspeed capabilities to fighters that otherwise lack hyperdrive engines. We see them used with Jedi starfighters, which in their second incarnation are clearly set up as precursors to the TIE fighter. Given how cool this concept is, it puzzles me somewhat how we've gone almost 2 decades without seeing hyperdrive ring technology retroactively applied to TIE fighters. You could obviously say that granting hyperspeed capabilities to TIE fighters goes against Imperial doctrine, but at the same time, specialized TIE variants such as the TIE Advanced and the TIE Defender do indeed have hyperdrives, showing that the Empire does have at least certain mission profiles in mind where they would prefer a hyperspeed capable fighter. So why not apply hyperdrive ring technology to Imperial hardware? In the absence of a canon design for such a theoretical concept, I decided to design my own. See, the Empire could easily have things both ways, producing cheap, expendable TIE fighters with no hyperspeed capabilities, but also making a smaller number of hyperdrive units that can be attached on a mission-by-mission basis, used only when needed. Now, these hyperdrive modules would be notably less robust than their Republic predecessors. While hyperdrives are usually an expensive and maintenance-heavy technology, these modules would be more crudely assembled and designed with really only a one-way trip in mind, similar to the disposable hyperspace pods of Imperial probe droids. Exiting hyperspace, the burned-out module could be easily jettisoned and left to drift as inert space junk. While this approach would appear wasteful, the costs of maintaining the tight tolerances of a well-functioning hyperdrive unit were just about as high as the cost to factory produce a new one, and the Empire with near unlimited resources really had no concerns about waste. Additionally, these disposable modules would have the twofold benefit of allowing the Empire to keep a tight leash on their pilots, who were completely dependent on the Empire to come and pick them up after the completion of their mission, and this also ensured that functional hyperdrive units never fell into the hands of rebel cells or other private groups. Though these modules were actually manufactured by Arakan Industries, the same company behind the probe droid and their hyperspace pods, they were developed in close cooperation with Sinar to ensure that the hardware was completely compatible with the TIE fighter and could be easily controlled by the TIE fighter's computer systems. The function of these modules was quite simple. The module would open to receive the cockpit ball of a TIE fighter and mechanically clamp down onto the ball, sharing power and computer control through 2 specialized clamps that interfaced with ports on the TIE fighter. After a successful jump, the module could be jettisoned with the aid of explosive bolts. At first, Imperial engineers were concerned that the explosive jettisoning of these modules would draw attention to TIE fighter squadrons dropping out of hyperspace and thus give hostiles advance warning of their approach, but it was determined that the scattering module fragments actually had the tendency to confuse most targeting scopes, making it difficult for an enemy to understand the strength and approach vectors of the attacking force at a glance. Ultimately, as fate would have it, these modules would rarely see use. The Empire had a presence nearly everywhere in the galaxy, and there were already very few instances where Imperial facilities or Star Destroyers with their own squadrons of TIE fighters weren't already nearby, thus making hyperdrive-capable fighters largely irrelevant for the Empire. But that's my take on a TIE fighter hyperdrive module. This was a really cool project to tackle. I was just curious one day and thought I'd see if anybody had designed something like a hyperdrive ring for a TIE fighter, and I just couldn't find one. So I thought it was a great opportunity to try it myself and see what I could come up with. I had a lot of fun with this one, and I hope you had fun watching. And with that, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.